Now, currencies are backed by production, okay? By production. Your currency is as strong as what you produce and what you export. That gives your currency value. And it was for that reason that the Nkrumah government came up with the import substitution program, which led to the establishment of many factories across the country so that our dependence, on foreign goods, and therefore the need to denominate trade in foreign currency was lessened. So we're producing shoes, we're producing television sets, we're producing fridges. Even at one stage, we're producing vehicles and so on. All of that was meant to give effect, to the emergence of a strong currency and so on. Now, what is important is that even at the time that the cedi was being introduced, it was vigorously opposed by opponents of Nkrumah. Indeed, some of them insisted that we should still have the Queen of England's effigy on our currency, and the historical records are there. I mean, for petty reasons such as having the Queen's effigy on our currency and so on, they insisted that we should not introduce the cedi. Now, a number of things happened after the 1966 coup, which started the devaluation of the cedi in very, very unpalatable terms and so on. First of all, the import substitution program of the Nkrumah government was abandoned. Factories were deliberately destroyed and privatized and so on. There is the case of the establishment of the tannery at Avayima in the Volta region, tannery, and a meat factory also in Bolgatanga, and a shoe factory in Kumasi. These three factories were linked. The cows were slaughtered in Avayima, and the skins of the cows were used for the hide, the manufacture of leather and so on, which went to Kumasi to feed the Kumasi shoe factory. And then the meat went to the Bolgatanga meat factory where we were producing Volta corned beef and so on. Now, my brother, do you know what happened after the coup? These reckless soldiers in the service of neo-colonial interests and so on shot these cows and used the meat to prepare pepper soup for troops. Yes. They did not just collapse the tannery, they collapsed the meat factory and destroyed the shoe factory. So for a very long time, we were dependent on other countries for the supply of boots for our military, prison service, police service, and so on. It was under President Mills that an attempt was made to revive the Kumasi shoe factory to produce footwear for our security services and so on. I don't know how well that fared and so on. But all of these things have impact on the strength of your currency. Okay. Then we went to the International Monetary Fund and the IMF, and one of the conditions they've always applied is that you need to devalue your currency. Okay. Of course, the worst form, the worst attack on the value of our currency took place in 1983 under Mr. Rawlings, and that's a fact, when we went for the economic recovery program and so on. Now, cumulatively between 1983 and the year 2000, the Ghanaian cedi had been devalued by as much as 26,000%. Can you wrap your head around that figure? 26,000% devaluation.
That's huge.
Huge, and so on. So this is a problem that we are, confronted with. Now, yesterday, the Bank of Ghana made the point that we need to treat the currency well, because it takes resources to print the currency. So if you don't keep it well, people keep the cedi in all kinds of ways and so on. And it deteriorates very fast. We have to spend a lot more money printing. And that in itself has a negative impact on the economy and also the strength of the currency. So I agree with the governor of the Bank of Ghana and also the vice president that we need to take measures in order not to destroy the cedi. So, now again, if you're a student of economics, especially old economics,
classical economics.
Well, I'm not so sure that they're classical, but old economics,
right,
out of fashion economics and so on.
Okay.
One generally tends to believe that the strength of a currency is dependent on its gold backing. Modern economics does not uphold that theory. Because the US dollar is not backed by gold. You understand? The US dollar's strength is that it has become a currency of choice in international trade. And that in itself gives the currency some measure of strength. So it's not the amount of gold that the US dollar has backing it, which gives it its strength. But the fact that it's a currency of choice in international trade, because of all these international arrangements, the SWIFT system, all kinds of things, and so on. Okay. Now, where are we today? We are in a period where, over the last 9 months, the cedi has appreciated significantly. Over the last 9 months, the cedi has appreciated significantly. And my brother is right. The cedi now is exchanging at about 10 cedis to a dollar. I mean, last year, it hit 17 point something to a dollar. That's a significant appreciation. Now, I don't fully understand why the cedi is appreciating so fast. I don't, and I would not pretend that I understand it. But I'm told that we are using our gold resources to shore up the cedi, and that the Bank of Ghana periodically releases cedis, for the purchase of gold, which is then used as some kind of a backing, for the currency and so on. And that is one of the reasons why the cedi appears to be appreciating. I hope it is true. I don't know that as a fact. I hope it is true. What I also know is that over a period of time, we have actually been using the cedi, even in local transactions. The dollar, in local transactions. And that tends to weaken, the cedi. So, for example, you walk into a boutique and makeup for women and so on is sold in dollars. Sandals are sold in dollars, shirts are sold in dollars. You want to rent a nice, decent flat, you have to pay in dollars as well. All of this affect the value of the cedi. And that is why I'm happy that measures are being put in place to insist on the fact that in Ghana, the legal tender is the cedi, and that we need to do our trading in cedis rather than in foreign currency and so on. I'm very happy with that measure. But ultimately, what will sustain the value of our cedi or make the value of our cedi appreciate and so on is production. Production. That's the only way. You understand? If you look at the cocoa sector, it is frightening. What has happened in the cocoa sector in the last 5 years is frightening. And you remember I told you that I actually pity Randy Abbey, and that I thought that he was doing very, very well in Metro TV, and he would have stayed here, and avoided carrying this huge problem on his head. One, they said that cocoa is the mainstay of the economy. Mm-hmm. Now, if cocoa is the mainstay of the economy, it means that it has an impact on the value of your currency and so on. Over the last 5 years, cocoa production has gone down by more than 50%. 50% drop in the level of cocoa production. That should worry anybody. Worse still, Cocoa prices on the international market have shot up, okay? But because we are doing forward sales and so on, we are not benefiting from this huge increase in the producer price of cocoa. That's a huge problem for the economy. So the revival of the cocoa sector of the national economy, and if we have to abandon it, I'm not a stickler for revival. If we have to abandon it, what other alternatives are we going to look at? And this is a matter for discussion and debate and so on. But the cocoa sector places huge constraints on the national currency. And don't forget that last year, was it, we failed to secure the syndicated loan, which we used for cocoa purchases from the farm gate and so on. What was the reason for that? It is interesting to examine that reason. So, but bottom line, as I've said from the very beginning, is that if you want to shore up your currency, you produce. And you depend less on imports and so on. Now, today, rice has become a major staple for Ghana. It wasn't. And when some of us were growing up, you could only eat rice on festive occasions, Easter and Christmas, and so on. Today, everybody eats rice sometimes twice a day, you understand? And rice has become a major staple. Why? Again, all the 16 regions of Ghana, and I mean all the 16 regions of Ghana, have favorable conditions for the cultivation of rice. And yet, Ghana is rice import dependent. Amazing. I mean, I saw the figures last week. I couldn't believe it. Why is it that all the 16 regions of Ghana have favorable conditions for the cultivation of rice? And not just that. The rice we produce in Ghana has better nutritional value than the rice we import. And yet, every year, close to about 3 billion or so is spent on the importation of rice. If you want to strengthen your currency, you stop reliance on imported rice, produce local rice, which we can do in 1 year. You know the story of that Ghanaian who went to Nigeria and assisted them to beef up their rice production and so on. It took less than 18 months for him to achieve his target. So it is possible, if we took the right measures, to boost rice production, say in 2 years' time. That way, the huge amounts of money we spend in foreign exchange, especially in dollars, importing rice, will be conserved. It will have an impact on the value of the cedi, and it will help us develop sustainable agriculture tailored to the nutritional needs of our people and so on. And we've spoken about this for so many years. It never happened. So, increasing rice production would make an impact on the value of the cedi. It will make an impact on the nutritional quality of the food that Ghanaians eat, and so on, so many other things. So this is how I like to approach the question of the cedi. No doubt, the introduction of the cedi was part of the effort to assert national sovereignty. And I am all for asserting national sovereignty. You understand? Within some context. But national sovereignty, the independence we gained, is valuable. It needs to be protected. You cannot be protecting your national independence if you're not protecting your national currency and so on.